Dylan, how are you, man?
I'm well, man. Very well. I've got no complaints.
And I can't tell you how much I really, really appreciate you doing this. This has really come out of left field, and because we have this kind of 6 degrees of separation in terms of how we now know each other, which is
Yeah.
it's wild. So I really appreciate it because it's not, like there's a bit involved and it's time consuming, and you don't know me, and I'm very
Yeah,
grateful.
no, it's good to meet you.
Yeah, likewise. Likewise. I'm a fan.
Yeah.
I'm a big fan.
Good.
Um, I think I was telling you when we had our pre-podcast earlier today.
Yeah.
I had seen you in a bunch of things, and the most recent was "I Am the Night," and my wife and I were chilled to the bone by your performance, and we're like, and then my wife's sitting there going, I think this is the dude that's married to my cousin's best friend from high school or something. I was like, what? And apparently he's like the nicest dude on the planet. As an actor, I'm sitting there going, isn't it just so? It's a trip, like when you like to find out that that person is like, how is it that they're pulling off? Like you're like it's terrifying in that show.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, I don't think there's any question of just. And I was like, oh, I can kind of. Nah, you're stone cold, merciless in that show. And whenever you come onto the screen, you're like, fuck, yeah, right? Like, and that how did that all happen?
Um, yeah, it's a weird one that, I've been cast. A kind of villain seems to be the way my career's gone in different countries, actually. But that was one. Uh, my manager in LA got me an audition for it. Kudos to him to get me in the room. To be honest, I think a big part of it was the fact that it was Patty Jenkins. So the first big A list was covered, and Patty wasn't just sort of at that time, and maybe still today, considered certainly if not one of the most powerful directors, the most sought after director in Hollywood because of her success on Wonder Woman.
Right.
But she because she was a female, a female director, and that's still such a novelty in Hollywood in many respects. And furthermore, because she did this kick-ass sort of action superhero movie, which women sort of certainly weren't known for. She was a bit of a celebrity, so I think she covered a certain amount of the A-list celebrity status. And then, of course, getting Chris Pine, and her and Chris have a production company now together.
Right.
So they're kind of in collusion. And so then they had a movie star in their limited edition show. So in many ways, I think that gave passage to casting being able to open up and look for people that weren't as well known.
Because they had
And
faith in them, and they were like, well, if you think that guy's the guy, then we're behind you, sort of thing.
yeah, and they know they can tag any promo if they need to with from the director of Wonder Woman,
Right.
starring Chris Pine. Um, and one would imagine to a certain degree, depending on how, what the pressures are and what people are trying to make, you would hope in many respects that a lot of directors are looking to cast fairly unrecognizable faces because they want you to disappear
Yeah.
into the character they're trying to convince
Mm-hmm.
you of, etc. But anyway, yeah, no, I got an audition for that and thought I did a really good audition. And it was for the kind of the rough cop, the nasty cop.
Oh, the dude who used to be in Seinfeld and what have you.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah. He's popping up everywhere. He's great. Yeah.
yeah. He's terrific. And then Patty was like, "No, I think no." First, I auditioned for. First I auditioned for Chris Pine's best friend, the
Yeah.
former co-war vet, who's a
Yeah.
really great actor as well. Um, then she was like, "Nah, I think we're going to go somewhere different with this. We're going to go with the evil cop." And it was like, I think you're more evil than that. So then it was like the completely deranged psychopathic artist. Um, and that's when it was quite instantly, she was quite, yeah, that's the perfect fit, face to function. And yeah, and then got that. And that was definitely one of the biggest breaks I'd had before this. And it was like, it was the dream job insofar as you got to go shoot in LA, you got to shoot on 35 mil, you got to shoot. It's about LA, it's film noir. I think what was difficult a little bit for me is the character was, I think, a rough sketch in their head, and they didn't know how much he would or wouldn't play.
Okay.
And in fact, the studio ended up wanting to know more, which I think wasn't really Patty's original idea or the creator's original idea. I felt like my role was, well, once I got to LA and started to figure out more about the part, I felt like I was supposed to be the kind of man in the shadows, a bit of a film noir concept. You're the creep, and you're always seen from somebody else's perspective.
Right.
You never really find out about who this guy is. But I think the studio ended up putting some pressure on them in the reshoots that we actually won. So a lot of the reshoots were me, and they were filling out little moments to try to learn a little more about why this guy would do what he does, which I took as a compliment that on some
100%.
They weren't trying to bury me, which you always fear. And it was challenging in a way because I've gotten a lot of parts like that in a sense where, they go, wow, great charisma, great presence, great face. And then they know I've got the experience to work on big movies and that they won't have to worry about me and all that stuff, which does come into it. But somehow, I knew that on some level, what they wanted to see was the mask of this guy. They want to see evil. There's evil. And so that for me was a lot of my prep, was just trying to understand how to present evil. It wasn't like, is that guy or isn't he? Maybe he's a nice guy. It was like, no, that guy's bad.
Right. And mission accomplished. I mean, from the second that you see it for the first time, you're like I said, it's just in droves. Yeah. There's no ambiguity there at all. Yeah.
Yeah.
Which
is weird. I mean, you can't help your face. That's what kills me. It's sort of like, damn. I mean, to be fair, I had said, since the first impression is the most important, and you want to convey that story right off the bat, then, can we do something? Can we do some teeth? Can we do something that's just kind of like uncomfortable and off? And actually they responded with that by putting those pock marks on my face.
Okay.
Which were just gold. They were so quiet. They were so subtle.
Absolutely are. I mean, that is one. It isn't. God, and I feel bad for people.
Yes,
that have them, because that is the feeling that it evokes is an uneasiness. Yeah, and it's like this dude's been like in the basement, beat up by his mum, like or something, and he's just And look, when we spoke before, this is a rare opportunity to ask millions of questions, and I'll be walking that balance of making it conversational, but and of course, so I'm going to ask you what's it like to work with Chris Pine, and of course you're not going to turn around if it was and say, oh, he's a total prick, but I'm a big fan of his too, and have watched him over the years as well. I would imagine that was a treat to work with him too.
It was actually because I'm a big fan of Chris Pine, and I had seen Hell or High Water a little while before, and I just loved the film. And I actually was really impressed with I think that was his, and I think that's a seminal film in the trajectory of his career. Like I think,
Agree.
I think it's something he's trying to get back to. Like he went on to do that other film with that same Scottish director, um, the period film in Scotland about.
Oh yeah,
What's
the
his,
Last King, is it?
yeah, The Last King.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. Great. I thought that was a great film too.
I haven't seen it yet,
Yeah,
actually. To be honest, having a 2-year-old, that's my
changes things. Yeah, yeah,
yeah,
yeah.
perpetual excuse. Haven't seen anything, but no, so I'd seen that and I thought he made really sophisticated choices about how to shift from a very kind of dignified middle class, kind of fairly erudite pretty boy to a kind of a proper blue collar southerner. And I think we all have Heath Ledger to thank for Brokeback Mountain, showing about sometimes it's just a kind of just quiet everything, disappear. Don't do it in flash, do it in subtraction.
Yeah, I mean it's a masterclass in subtlety, isn't it?
Yeah,
and
exactly.
I've watched some really great breakdowns of his performance, even from dialect and vocal coaches, saying just even the tightness in his jaw, which helps like infect everything that he does, shows you this bundled up, like tight person who doesn't very rarely lets anything out, so that when he does, that why can't I quit you scene is. I mean, it breaks your heart. Like, yeah,
It really does.
Yeah.
So yeah, Chris had done that. So, and this, I thought this was a great role for Chris because, it was just it was fast and it was sexy and it had integrity and you had to believe he cared. And I thought the challenges were for him to appear a victim of PTSD. He's an early case of PTSD in a major way. He's addiction. And those aren't colors. People give Chris leading man Captain Kirk. They give him that stuff. So that was really cool. And then working with him, what I was really blown away by was he was very, very present. He's very instinctual. He trusts himself to be live, right there. He in a way he gets out of his own way. So he trusts his own charisma, and he trusts himself. And I think he's fast. He's very smart. He's very interested. He's curious. And I think it's an opportunity to practice kind of, hold on tight, let go quickly, a kind of speed, the same way that Robert Downey Jr. just can fly through stuff, just trippingly. I think it was a chance. It was very cool to watch Chris just kind of move. Like he was really fast. And it's nice when somebody plays something strong, and if you're trying to play something strong and you start to see that rhythmically you guys are in two very different places, and that's kind of very exciting because then it's two really different people in the room, and how you meet becomes quite easy to work off of. I can use his energy.
Yeah. And I mean, and that's showcased so well in the space between you as you slowly get closer and closer as each episode goes by. And if memory serves me correctly, there's an art gallery sort of scene where you're trailing him through there, are you not? Is that? And then you guys, now you have to forgive me because I've actually, my memory is telling me that you do in the end. Well, I don't want. Maybe I shouldn't give away spoilers for people about what happens, but it really does crescendo, right? Like between the two of you. Yeah.
It really does crescendo. And everything about that film, about that show was there's a lot to learn, and it was also. It, I mean, it's always interesting in a way because you think, oh, I'm going to go and I'm going to learn a lot. But actually, what happened, the truth is they want you to show up because they believe you're a master of your craft
Yeah.
on some level, and they don't have time to teach. They don't want to think of you as somebody that they have to teach. And so in many ways, it was an affirmation of like, okay, yeah. I feel like every project on some level has been, because of all the time that passes in between projects, and unless you have a clear trajectory towards stardom and it's very clear you're becoming that person, I've constantly found myself sort of rediscovering, oh yeah, you know what you're doing, oh yeah, okay, great, just get out, like you see it in their reflection, and that kind of lets you out. So it's weird, like on one level, the things I learned from Chris is, in that type of role, speed and throwaway, and whatever your prep is, be ready when they say action to go, and make sure that you've been cleared with the director that when we say action again on the same scene, it's going to be a bit different because I don't quite know what's going to happen, because that's the place I need to be in that leading role, that's slightly edgy, but I'm driving the story. So I've got to be that fast. So I learned a lot from that. And I think the fact that generally people felt my performance was a success made me think that there is something about understanding and I wish a little more on that. I'd asked sort of what the look of shots were. I think it was just the production was a bit bigger than me, and everybody was a bit bigger, and I didn't feel like stealing that kind of time.
Right, you just do what's, yep, I'm going to be here, and this is it, and work inside that. Yeah.
Yeah, but I mean, if you start to understand that you are an image, you're trying to paint a picture of, and that guy's supposed to be that, then in that sense, I think it's probably useful to say, can I see the shot? Because I might be able to help about where my eyes are, because we're literally trying to establish something. And
because that's quite tricky for directors in that space, isn't it, too, as to who do I spend the time looking back at shots, because it's kind of a no-no sometimes too, isn't it, to show an actor their shots, because maybe they're not up for seeing that shot in terms of their own insecurities if they can't see the bigger picture like a director can and what have you. But I myself, in my small space here, having in my limited experience, and because I am a photographer, I really act from a place of composition as opposed to like, I love to know what's going to happen inside that frame so I can tune it to the best of my ability.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, I guess that's again where you trust a director on some level. If I'm not doing something right for the shot,
you want to know about it. Yeah,
you're not quite understanding that we're shooting this kind of low and very arch. Then and you might kind of recognize, I mean, certainly you would as a photographer recognize, based on the lens size and the position of the camera, what kind of shot we're dealing with. And I guess what becomes difficult sometimes is when they try to translate really what they want to say is just be still, because this is just on you. And then they translate that into language that isn't necessarily helpful. And
right.
I want to say, just show me the picture. Okay, I get it.
Yeah. They use all the nomenclature, and you're like, can I just see the fucking thing? And then I'll, and then I know, because I am also the audience, and also it's too. It's when you're. I imagine, I have never worked on a TV show, but when it's so, especially something that's, I mean, the amount of hours that you would have filmed over an extended period of time. there's that thing that comes in too. Of course, the editing and the journey that the audience is on, so that when that shot lands, you don't maybe you don't actually have to be doing a single thing. Just like when you see you in the car watching them, and that the work that they've done with you, like as you said with the prosthesis or prosthetics, sorry, like job done, right? Like you just have to burn holes in your target and that's it. Yeah, that's definitely been. So
yeah, I think that's really important. I mean, I worked on on my mask a lot in terms of. I don't know. I ended up finding myself looking at Mike Tyson before pre-fight. I'm not a big boxing fan, but I remember. I don't know if it had been in recent times at that point, but somehow I found myself looking at Tyson in interviews at the peak of his career, but pre-match, when the announcers sort of explaining to them, no low shots, da 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 da, and just watching Tyson look at somebody, and he was like the scariest. That is the scariest look. And you just know if that person looks over at you and looks irritated at you, dare I say angry at you, with that kind of a look,
you're going to shit your pants.
You're just going to, you lose it. And so that was my thing of kind of going, what is a violent look? How do you look at evil? How do you look at a violent act and relish it, because he has that speech at some point where he's saying to the girl what he's going to do, and he relishes it because he's an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's not just about murdering, it's about creating something. And so you've got to fall in love with
the art
of it.
Mm-hmm.
And also and I guess that was cool to me that we were actually, I'd grown up seeing a lot of surrealist art and knew a fair bit about it. I grew up in a very kind of art heavy family, but I had no idea. It wasn't until my wife said she had seen an exhibit in London that was a reappropriation of surrealist art by feminist artists that I started to see that the surrealists were not just misogynistic, they were on the brink of violent towards women.
Right.
Yeah,
that's
so in a way I felt like, my job isn't to play a misogynist, it's or a rapist. It's in fact that's left to some of the other characters. My character, he probably wouldn't do it to another guy because it's about women and literally dismembering them to create art. And how do you, because that is just so far out there, you've got to find an in.
Right. Yeah, the simplistic specificity of that objective. Yeah. I guess that's one of the things that we all, I imagine, when you first, that lesson as you go through learning acting is to not to lean into the stereotype of the baddie or the goodie or what have you, and let the world that's been set up around you accommodate whatever it is that you're doing. And you have to find that synergy between the two. I've always been a big fan of and learnt a lot from the inside the actor's studio. Not just the conversations that the guest and Lipton have, but also the questions that come afterwards. And this is not a bad segue, but one of the ones that really stuck with me the most was Tom Cruise talking about preparation. And it was interesting because Tom Cruise, he can be quite a little bit like Leonardo DiCaprio in that sense. He's very giving and everything, but he'll keep a certain cutoff as to what he's going to share about technique and things like that, because for whatever reason. But he shared this little pearl about, if you've done your prep and everything's like the writing is great and it's all happening, and you were talking about this before about freedom on the day when you get there, if all of your prep is right and it's in your cells and you're ready to go, and the scene, is a really teary scene, maybe you don't cry, but if your prep is right, whatever comes out is the right choice for that moment. And I found that to be very empowering, because when you're starting out, if the subtext, or not the subtext, the action says, and then he cries, you've got this big build up of as an amateur, I've got to fucking cry in this scene, and I found that to be very helpful. So the segue that I'm talking about is you worked on The Mummy.
Yeah.
With Tom Cruise.
Yeah. With Tom Cruise. Yeah.
And you're in the airplane. You're a pilot. That famous scene that was the big part of their publicity.
Yeah. And Tom called it, actually, or TC, as we were told to refer to.
Really?
TC. No, well, that he would be referred to as TC over the radio or something, because they never know who's decided to
listen in
spyware on the audios of the AD department. But yeah, I met him. I met him in the cockpit. We were brought in, sat in the cockpit, and then he came in, and it was hilarious. Actually, the other guy in the cockpit, I did another movie with called Spectral.
Oh, great film. Great film.
Yeah, that actor was on Spectral and was let go because, for no other reason than they had two very tall African American guys, and they felt that there were too many characters, and so they let go one of the two tall black guys. Consequently, he went on to play Obama, and he went on to have an unbelievable career.
Wow.
Yeah, probably the fastest growing career of anybody in that movie.
Oh, wow.
And he was let go after being there for 4 weeks. But anyway, I hadn't seen him since then, and then lo and behold, we showed up on this movie, and it was like, oh my God, there you are. We're both going to be. And it was so lovely, because it was like, oh my God, we're going to be in this thing. It's going to be super high intense scene. And there were other bits as well that got cut, but, and it's going to be with Tom Cruise. And you just thought, oh, this could get so stiff and awkward. And, but because I had Parker Sawyers, because he's such a hilarious dude, we were just laugh. And then it was sort of like, oh, Tom's come to set. Hey guys, Tom's come to set. And Tom comes in, and he's over our shoulder, and it was just so informal, but it was insane too, because it was sort of like, hey guys, I'm Tom. Any of you guys fly planes? No? Okay. Well, I do. I fly a lot of planes. Actually, the DP flies planes, and he flies planes. So you guys got any questions about planes? This is good. And then, I mean, the thing about that movie that was so intense, kind of wonderful, but also very intense, was, I don't know what Tom's opinion of the film at that stage was, but he'd pretty much taken over control of the directing. So at some point, I don't know if he does this I don't think he probably does this with all his movies, but certainly on this type of an action film. And in our scene, he was like, he literally said at some point, he was saying to the director and to the DP, guys, that's not the shot. Guys, this is the trailer. This is the trailer right here. So, and at some point he said to kind of everybody behind the camera, guys, you're 16 years old. You're taking your first date to the movies. The lights go down. You got yourself a popcorn and a drink, and the movie's coming up, and you're next to the girl you've always wanted to go on a date with. That's what this movie is about. He thought about it, and in a way, and so he was saying, like, guys, that's not the shot. Show me the camera. No. Put the camera right there. Show me the monitor. Down a bit, over a bit. Okay, that's the shot, guys. That's the shot. And you could say, and he was very controlling with his co-lead, the actress, who's actually Chris Pine's girlfriend.
Is she? I didn't know that.
Yeah. And I mean, I think she's a terrific actress, and I don't know what it was like, but you always have the fear that some actor who's more senior than you is going to tell you what to do. And
Right.
well, in this case, Tom was, and to his credit, this is his genre.
Yeah. He's the master of this. Yeah.
He knows this world. So,
Yeah.
so when he's like, they'd come in and rehearse the scene, and then he'd turn to her and say, "Are you going to stand there? Is that where you're going to stand? I think you need to stand here. I think you should probably stand right there. Probably stand there." And to certain actors, that would just be like,
No.
I'm out of here.
No. Yeah.
But I suspect, I imagine she's Annabelle Wallis. She's a very fine actress, and I suspect she was just, probably reconciled the experience with, well, I'm just going to try to learn something. Let Tom do what he does because this is what he knows. And so in many ways it was weird. He was completely controlling, which I anticipated. Incredibly high energy. We started shooting the scene. We started rehearsing the scene. He was just like, nobody would say this. Nobody would say this. Get the writer here. Get the writer here. Okay, guys, we needed something like this. We need something. And we were about to shoot the scene, and then nope. Writers were sent away, rewrite the scene completely. Didn't believe any of the writing. Writers were sent away, and then we came in to shoot it. And he told my buddy Parker exactly how to say the lines. No, say it like this.
Like a line read. Is that what they call it? A line read?
A line read, yeah.
Yeah. Oh.
He gives he almost gave. But with I was proud to say that with me, he didn't, for some reason. God knows his motivations, but so it was kind of. It was intense. It was intense.
It was intense.
It's always
intense, right? He's just a fucking intense dude. Yeah, like, and even in a rare glimpse I saw in an old interview somewhere too, where he said he struggled auditioning when he first moved out to Hollywood because everyone said he was too fucking intense. And I thought, wow, man. Because I love the intensity. That's his brand, right? And yeah. So wow, that's really fascinating. Yeah, the whole stand here, like I wonder, would he? I'm sure he would know where to draw the line if, like, he's sharing a scene with Daniel Day-Lewis.
For sure.
Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. And when he was working with P.T. Anderson on...
that's the other one I was thinking of. Yeah.
Where he plays that weird sales... Is he like a salesman?
Oh, T.J. Mackey. Yeah.
T.J. Mackey, yeah.
Yeah, in Magnolia.
Yeah, Magnolia.
Which is arguably one of his best performances as well, which is something to consider. Yeah.
And brilliant casting.
He's the master. Yeah.
Yeah, and to put Tom Cruise in that role brought something to that role that I think very few people could have brought to that role.
Right? Isn't that so fascinating? Like, you're 100% right. And I just read an article the other day about that, in that it's when he plays these roles out of left field that he's actually most artistically loved. And you're like,
oh, for sure. I mean, I think it's because I think you really have to appreciate the genre that he most often is in. And maybe, I think I would defer to those actors that have tried to do the films he's tried to do. Watch themselves, especially if they're really good actors, watch themselves back. And, like, ask a Daniel Craig, what do you think of Tom Cruise when he does Mission Impossible? I wouldn't be surprised if Daniel Craig, a very sophisticated actor, but who's playing an action hero, essentially, in James Bond, is whether or not he turns around and he goes, the guy's unbelievable at doing
that thing.
What that genre needs.
A few dishes in the background.
Yeah. Just checking on whether or not the little kid is woken
Are you
up.
good?
Yeah, I'm good.
Yeah,
I'm
yeah,
good.
yeah, yeah. I think you're 100% right because he does exist in this very unique realm where, as everyone knows, he's also the stunt guy and the technician, and he's doing all this crazy shit, which every other action hero actor is like, all right, stunt man, goodbye. Like I'm out. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah. I
yeah,
mean, yeah, he lives for it. That's right. It's not just it's for him. It's so much more than just being an action movie actor.
yeah,
It's
yeah, yeah, yeah.
he's flying those fighter jets. Not just flying those fighter jets in the new Top Gun. He's doing crazy stunts in the fighter jets. You know,
Yeah.
all by himself. You know, just like nuts. And yeah, I've got a lot of I've got a lot of respect for certainly him as a professional. And what I felt on that film was like, man, I loved him because he was talking his knowledge out loud.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he was instructing everybody, but he was explaining to them why he was saying move the camera there.
Right.
Because
Instead of
this is
just
why
do
that shot.
this. This is
Yeah.
why people. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Trust me.
And
Yeah.
so for me, it was like, just listen, listen,
Yeah.
listen. There's a shit, you know, there's a whole epic career of information, and he will have, and I, you know, you get the impression he's studying films left, right, and center to try to figure out, you know, why does he know that that's the shot? Why
Yeah.
does he
Yeah.
decided I'm going to do this film and this? He didn't need to do The Mummy, and it was a total bomb. But he knows that that film is a popcorn Saturday night date movie.
Yeah.
So let's make that movie. And he's probably studied the most famous kind of perfect films of that genre. So yeah, I'm nothing but respect for him. As intense as he is, he's totally not my vibe. But
I imagine he would just be. I mean, like he's one of my all-time favorites, and I wonder about it a lot. I just wonder, like, what's the go? You know, like if you were to sit down with him over a coffee, would you walk away going, "Wow, that was really great," or just what the fuck? Like, you know,
I think a bit of both.
bit of both.
I have a really good, yeah, I have a really good friend in England, a director named Tom Harper, who's becoming very quickly a very big name in the directing world. He just did this movie called, I think it's called The Aviators on Amazon. It's their first in-house. It was the one with
Don't you hate that?
it's about hot air. It's
Oh
about
yeah,
hot
yeah,
air
with
balloon.
Eddie Redmayne.
Eddie Redmayne.
Yeah, 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 yeah.
And Felicity.
Yeah, yeah.
Felicity.
Felicity Jones. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Felicity Jones.
I haven't seen it. Aeronauts.
Aeronauts, sorry.
Yes,
Aeronauts.
yeah.
I should know that. Sorry, Tom. Sorry. But Tom went to meet Tom Cruise at his house once. And I think at the time it was about a possible Richard Curtis film that maybe Tom Cruise was going to do. And so they went to pitch it to him. And
It's in Utah or Colorado.
yeah, something like that.
Yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
Yeah, and they flew out there, and it was like, you know, you get a window, and while the meeting was happening, his assistant was bringing in new armor for one of his films that was being tried on. So it was so intense. He was like talking to them about their Richard Curtis film, which is, you know, it's not
Yeah.
an action movie. And at the same time trying on this like futuristic metal armor. Telling his
It's the
assistant,
yeah.
no.
He's the real
Give me
deal.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah. He's just doing it all, juggling 1,000 things. And my friend Tom Harper came away kind of like, you know, he seems both a madman and brilliant, super knowledgeable. His thoughts on the script were all well received. You know, they were things worth considering, and certainly considering his position on it, he knows kind of he's had the biggest films flop and he's had the biggest films be a success. So yeah, so yeah, all the power to him. I think he's a seminal part of our industry, really.
Yeah. He is. We've grown up with him, and
Yeah.
say what you will. Say what you will. I mean, I think Alec Baldwin said it best to Howard Stern. He was like, you know what? People say whatever they want, man. But as far as I'm concerned, I haven't had as much fun as I've had working with him in the Mission Impossibles. And the level of shit that he is managing, if Scientology's how he finds a way to manage it, fucking go for it. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care about that. All I can tell you is my experience on those films has been next level and incredible, and I'll do it a million times over. So, and I remember way back when Renee Zellweger won her Oscar, she thanked him for teaching her some, like, on Jerry Maguire. And I thought, that kind of speaks volumes too, right? If you're thanking him in an Oscar speech that he's not even associated with, pretty incredible.
Yeah, very incredible. Very
so you're in New Zealand right now, and I know that you can't go too much into all the rest of it, but you've landed. Wait, can you talk about even the project you're working on before I?
Yeah. I can say they've announced that. Yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah. Great.
Yeah.
So you're in New Zealand right now. You're working on the first season of the Lord of the Rings TV show.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It's a big one.
This your biggest?
Yeah, I mean, the only other one would have been I Am the Night in terms of, there's been some big productions like Total Recall, even Spectral was huge.
By the way, Total Recall,
The Immortals.
I fucking loved that film, and whoever naysayed it, you're not a friend of mine anymore. My friend and I went and saw it, and I thought it was so good. And that's where I first saw you. And it's so strange because I always remember that part of the film in the original. And when you came on, I was like, oh my God, I don't know how to explain it, but I remember you from that part. And I thought it was great.
It's kind of an odd thing. It's like, oh, he's got an ally.
Yeah. And you're nice in that film.
Yeah, I am nice in that. That's what was interesting. Auditioning back in Canada, casting in Canada was always, I thought they were more interesting in that they would see me for a much nicer roles, because they knew that, well, now we're presenting an interesting look for that very emotional, that very tender, that very complex emotional guy, in that the face isn't a sweet face. It's a kind of heavier face. And so I just thought they presented me as options, and I often got cast against the way I've been cast.
Right.
Which
presented.
Is interesting. Yeah. But so yeah, like the scale of the production is definitely as big as any of the shows. But the measure, the potential of the show, and the expectation on the show, and
it's massive.
To hear that it's the most expensive TV show ever made by miles, and to know, and then to come and to see that they've kind of, they've pulled the best of the best from around the world to work on it, and covered every single department. It's just got the best of the best, and my kid goes to a daycare here, and we befriended the parents of it, and lo and behold, this other kid's dad is the graphic designer on our show, meaning he'll do a lot of the kind of
concept art type stuff, or
the crests. Oh, he'll do like crests or emblems or whatever.
Oh, okay. Wow.
Like if you were in a cop station, basically anything on the walls is going to be designed by him. He is a graphic designer who's worked in. But he was saying he's worked on the film industry for quite a while. But even hearing it from his perspective, purely from the design perspective, he's like, I've never seen such a collection of artists. And we have a scene where a mask is being designed for somebody to wear.
Mm-hmm.
And I see the two people working on the mask, and I'm like, I can't recognize those two people. And then somebody goes, oh, did you know those are the two people that did Pan's Labyrinth? And I'm like, and they won the Academy Award, right?
Fucking
They
hell.
won the Academy Award. And there are these two beautiful Spanish people, just pure artisans, crafting sculptures out of clay, essentially, sitting in a thing. And you're just like, wow, you brought in everybody. So that size of it. But what's wonderful is because Lord of the Rings is something like the fifth most valuable intellectual property in the world or something. And they've kind of, because we're not doing, any part of, I think that's well-known public knowledge that we're not, the Tolkien estate didn't allow us to do anything that's ever been done.
Right.
So we can't do Lord of the Rings, the movies. We can't do The Hobbit.
Mm-hmm.
We can only do other stuff. So there's a lot of unknown in it, and the cast is relatively unknown. There's no
Which is great.
Which is amazing.
Yeah.
I can't say enough about the cast because for a lot of them, I don't know how many seasons I'll go, but there's certainly many characters who absolutely, because of the legendarium, know that they're in it for the whole.
Mm-hmm. Wow.
They're in it for the whole thing. And so and a lot of those actors are very young. It's a very young cast. They're young in the legendarium, they're young in the history, and it's quite beautiful to see these, like, really, like, I've worked with so many different actors from so many different corners of the world, and this is such an amazing collection of beautiful, down-to-earth, amazing people. Who knows? They could all be prima donnas in the next 2 seasons. But right now there are these, and it's really moving to watch them, because a lot of them, some of them literally stepped out of theater school. Some of them got cast while they were doing their final shows in theater school.
Yeah, one of the guys from my agency, I think, literally stepped out of Whopper and got the audition, and there he is. I don't know his name, but it's a new agency for me. But when we were discussing me coming on board, it's actually what we're working on right now is like a proof of archetype or a scene that we've been working on to film and what have you, so that I might get an audition for the next season coming through. And she was talking about having a little inside line on the types of people that were getting roles out there, and that they use that example of he just literally walked out of school. And one of the interesting things that she shared with me too was that in terms of what they were being told by the production, if they were going to cast Australians, what their dialect would be, and they want they don't want RP, which was the sort of thing that every Australian would go to. They want a kind of Martin Freeman sound from Australians, and if they want the Queen's English or posh or whatever, then they'll cast out of Britain directly and all this kind of stuff. And they don't want the northern of, and this could be all bullshit, you might be able to confirm this, of Game of Thrones from Australians, which might be the other place you go to. And I thought that was very fascinating as well. It's interesting to see these inside lines, how they structure it.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's, I don't know how consistent they are. I mean, I don't know there's how much I would be concerned about the inside details of that. But I came out of Britain, and I live in London normally, so I was doing something. I auditioned a neutral RP accent, a neutral accent, and I'm doing something completely different.
Right. Yeah.
It's still within the UK, it's still
Yeah.
within that part of the world's dialects, but so
Can I,
but at the same time, I've felt since we got here that they're not overly concerned with accents, because they know they're producing this for the big wide general audience, the
that's
global
interesting.
audience.
Yeah.
And so I think the two creators are absolutely brilliant, like proper brilliant dudes. Giant, they're twin towers. They're each like 6'4" or something. Insane. And they've been best friends since high school, I think. And they pitched this and they won it, and they know everything. I mean, one of them particularly speaks fluent Elvish. Fluent Elvish. And not just that, they both kind of already have come to understand what is Tolkienian language. So if you improvise something, or if you say, maybe my character might say something like this, if they think it's an idea, they'll go away, and then they'll come back at you with a rewriting of the line that is absolutely, it's like they just went away and wrote Shakespearean English and brought it back to you. And so it's quite mind-blowing. So you feel in really good hands, and I feel like they have such a clear idea of who people are and who characters are, that they've, I'm not a deep study of Tolkien's universe, so the idea that they picked this guy for that character, but I must say, having read the scripts now, I'm very impressed by the casting. It's not obvious, it's kind of unknown, but man, for the most part, has every single actor just been like, oh my God, that's a brilliant casting.
Wow.
For that role.
Wow.
That actor brings something, a quality. And I think that really lends itself, to that whole thing about, for me, like when I auditioned for this, it was such a gift, because I wasn't, I was going to be a kind of role that I don't always get, and I knew I had shades of that in me, and so it was just that perfect circumstance to remind yourself, like, get out of your own way. At the end of the day, no actor ever got cast because they were the best actor. They got cast because they got out of their own way. They allowed themselves to be seen in that character. And so when it came down to it, I mean, you still got to be a good actor. You got to know how to drive a scene and play your beats and not generalize, and listen and respond, and all the notes about acting. You got to have that. But when you're being considered for a series regular, especially, or any real part, I think, and it's hard when you get into this fantasy stuff. And I auditioned a number of times for Game of Thrones, and I feel like there was never a part that was quite suited to me. But I also think I misjudged,
right,
and maybe tried to reach to be something that I kind of that is actually something that the costume, the costume, the horses, the lighting, the script, the language did to that, dress that actor. But in fact, that actor, if you'd seen them in their plain clothes civvies in some bland casting room doing their audition, you'd be kind of like, right, that's what he did? And then you kind of look and you go, oh, it is the same performance. It's just completely done up. And so, like in this, without thinking about too much, because this scene was coded, the names weren't the same, there was no telling what kind of character it was. It was just a situation.
Because they really want to get a sense of your brand, right? And just where can we slot this person?
Yeah, I think a little, because I'd auditioned for Lord of the Rings like 5 months earlier.
Oh, okay.
Earlier on. I can't even remember what I might have auditioned for. but anyway, in this one, I just decided to get out of my own way and just play and deeply just try to sit comfortably in it and really just be present with the casting director and speak to her and play with her and and try to use whatever my objectives were, try to actually succeed with her, that casting director, in the room right there and then, basically doing everything I could to kind of just allow myself to be seen. And then that's totally out of your hands. Then, in a way, what you're saying is I trust myself to be a good enough actor, and now I leave it to you to decide whether Dylan Smith,
I'm your guy. Yeah.
I'm your guy, because God knows how many people you're looking for on this guy. So it's like, luck doesn't even cover it. People say I'm lucky. It's like, so it's huge amount of luck. There's a huge amount of training and a huge amount of work, and you've got to have certain things. But at the end of the day, you can't be more lucky than to be cast in something, because they literally sat with probably 20 actors, all brilliant actors, all really interesting choices for that particular role. And at the end, in pairing me up with somebody else who I'm going to probably be in the scene with, and maybe somebody else who's a bigger role than me, but I have to, look like that person.
Yeah, and carry that plot line along in such a way that it sets it up for the next big thing that's happening, and
Or I'm related to somebody and they've already cast that person.
Right.
I gotta look like that person. I mean, literally.
Because that can be the one that gets people over the line too, right? It's like, everyone's going to believe that person just by looking at them, so the job is done. Yeah, we can take care of the rest or whatever. Yeah,
for sure. And I was lucky. There were some actors who went through, and they were the ones in some of the biggest roles. They went through hell and high water to get the parts.
Right.
They literally traveled. They shot huge scenes. They needed constant reapprovals from Amazon further and further up the chain. And then there were some of us who did one audition, I think a month, maybe even 6 weeks later, got told you're in the running, got told the next couple of days you're being submitted to Amazon for approval, and then you got the part. So it just goes to show that, and there's a number of us who had that experience. You did one audition and you got the part. And to me, that says everything, that these guys know what they're looking for.
Yeah.
They really know what they're looking for. And I have friends on other shows with Amazon, and they've said that having shot with Amazon, and their shows are done a first season. Like I have a friend on Hunters, that's done its first season, and he was saying, the word on Amazon is they're really artist friendly. Their setup right now is to, if we vet you and you guys are the creators and you're the director,
do it.
Now it's yours.
Yeah. Okay. Wow. Yeah. Hunters is great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So you had one or two auditions for this, and they were in the room?
Yeah, the first one was with an assistant. Way back when. I think that was probably just a really loose casting net. And I think that one was done. I can't even remember what that audition was, to be honest. I have no idea. I've tried to rack my brain to kind of go, which part was that for? But it was so coded. And then months later, 4 months later, at least 6 months later even, I got an audition for this in November. Yeah, one audition. And went in with the casting director to read. It was lovely that it was her on that day. And actually, I have no idea, but actually our kids went to the same sing and sign class.
Wow.
and I hadn't seen her in ages. I hadn't auditioned for her in ages and hadn't seen her in ages. And she came up to me and she was like, "Hey, Dylan," and I was like, "Oh, hey, how's it going?" But she just we'd done an entire class without me recognizing her, and I'd just been the dad in the corner with my kid, and I love my kid, and maybe something in that perked her brain and went, "Oh, wait a second, maybe he'd be an interesting audition for that." You never know.
Yeah. That's interesting. There's a
You
great.
know, I mean, I get in the room with her, so it's not like that got, but God knows these people. Like, how do you get into casting directors' mind's eyes?
Right. 100%. It can be just a myriad of things that gets you over the line, and then it's just I just thought about this when you were talking before about, you know, doing all your prep and doing it right and acting well and being this and being that. But there's also this, like, the same as when you're writing a story. How do I make the audience emotionally engaged? And if you're in the room and you're able to engage the casting director emotionally, they'll never forget you,
Mm,
you know?
mm,
And that shouldn't be your objective, because then that needs to be the unspoken thing that just happens by doing it right, or being, like you said, getting out of your own way and letting your brand, your thing, come out. I think that's probably when
mm,
I
mm.
when I get a bit lost in it all, and I'm scared of when I see something great and I can't fathom ever doing something that great, or because I'm at such the beginning stages. I've had 2 lead roles in 2 feature films, and that's pretty much the extent of it. And I've written a bunch of things, and they're all very, very independent. Like I have a film coming out on Ozflix next month, which is like at the end of this month, which is, for me it's massive, but in the grand scheme of it is small. So when I get really anxious about, do I have the goods, that's what I fall back on, is um, just you know what, man, whatever comes to you, as long as you know you're prepared, let that be the thing, and then you let them decide from there, and that'll be the way through it, and you'll be able to uphold that too, right? If you're not trying to chase the tail of something, or a trend,
Yeah,
or be an entertainer. Yeah.
yeah. I mean, we are, I think we forget sometimes because, especially as we move more and more into self tapes, like we are performing artists,
Mm.
and so it's really hard because you do training, especially if you do theater training. You come from a classical conservatory. Um, you study the craft, which is all the prep, and then you study performance, and you learn, how do I do a show, and then if you're lucky enough and you get out and you do theater, then how do I do a show for 4 weeks, 8 weeks, months, over and over, and start at the beginning, and actually only in sort of getting a laugh one night, trying to do that again to get the laugh the second night, then falling on your face and going, "Oh, that's not how I get that laugh again. Oh shit, I've lost that laugh." And then you forget about it like 4 shows down, and then the next, because you've completely forgotten about it 5 shows later, you just kind of bump into the moment and you laugh again, and suddenly something drops and you go, "Oh, it's when I'm not prepared. It's nothing I can
Right.
do. In fact, I can't. I have to extract myself out of any cognizance of what's about to happen and just sort of bump into it, and then it'll happen." But we're performing artists, and I think it's hard. Like, self-tape world is hard, man. You gotta somehow ignite. Like I was saying to you in our phone call before, like, big thing for me was to dare to be bad in this. And I showed up at the first table read, which was scheduled to be a working read with the director, And so I was like, great, you know what I'm going to do? I'm really going to risk this time. It was also compounded by the fact that we weren't shown any scripts, so heavily NDA, weren't shown any scripts. Had only found out a few, like a week before we were going to do this table read, what my what my character's name, what accent I was in.
Wow.
And then we were going to have this table read working with the director, who I'd met very briefly, and I'd also shown up and sort of discovered that maybe my part wasn't as big as I thought it was.
Right.
It was I was really servicing another character's part, is how I perceived it at that moment. And so there's a little bit of a like, oh God, it's another one of these parts. It's never as big as I hope it's going to be, blah, 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 kind of going on. But I went to the first table read going, you know what, I'm going to start at neutral. I'm going to start neutral. I don't want to make any decisions. I want to just hear what everybody's doing, see where we are, and just beat it out. And then just like wait for my inspiration. Where's my inspiration going to come from? What's going to come? I have ideas about the structure. I talked with the other actors who I'm playing my scenes with about stuff, and we'd gotten into it, and it was great. But I went to the first table read, and there was like limousines pulling up as our driver dropped a few of us actors off, got in. There was like massive catering, 3 high-powered cameras, microphones on every single table, pen pad scripts were brought, things. The 2 creators got up and gave seminal speeches about like, and so begins the journey of Lord of the Rings. I'm like, what part of this is a hard-ass, roll up your sleeves working session with the director? Oh shit, you guys want a performance. And I'm a total people pleaser. I'm a Canadian people pleaser.
Right.
So I'm like polite on polite.
You are.
And yeah, I am completely. So I show up, and I don't know why. I think I'm trusting myself more as an actor, but I just kind of decided, I just kind of didn't do anything with it. And it was supposed to be funny, and I didn't do anything with it. And afterwards, I came home to my wife and I said, I think I might get fired from this job. And she's never heard me say that, but I was like, I think I might get fired. And
oh no, what a night.
and then we kept working on it. I wasn't bothered by it. I didn't get upset by it. I wasn't bothered by it. And then lo and behold, the next day, got called into the director's office. And me and another actor, and got called in the director's office, and he was like, guys, it's broad, it's funny, you just got to play the funny on it. And this went against everything that we'd been told, and this and that and this and that. I was like, oh, okay. So all of my sort of the integrity work that we're doing, but really, you got to sound this puppy out. And because I still was like, I refused to get nervous by the event of this production. And in fact, I think started to be a bit sort of, I was pushing back a bit against the kind of potential pressure of it all. We went to the next table read 2 days later, which was for Amazon. Now all of Amazon executives showed up to hear the read. And, this was being recorded, and this is going to be on some DVD extra features as like the first read of the first couple of episodes.
Wow.
And so the style that they were looking for wasn't lost on me, having come from going to British theatre school, growing up around, theatre from around the UK and Ireland and stuff. And so that kind of style of theatre that they were sort of, I think, looking for me, I was able to play more easily. And so I went and did it and made sure to get the laughs. I got the laughs. But then that same attitude carried me into the shooting of it. And not the negative attitude, but the kind of this thing I was talking to you about, daring to be bad. Because what I'd started to think was, man, the amount of shows that I had done where I had stuff planned and I knew I wanted to do stuff, the amount of auditions that I'd had stuff planned, but mainly shooting. And essentially I was trying to push something into something I'd planned and prepared, and I was trying to push it into the confines of a given, they were controlling everything and I was trying to squeeze it in. Whereas this time I was like, nothing. I've worked out some stuff. We've got the accent sorted. I figured out a couple of things. I got nothing. I got nothing. Show up on set and start pissing around, like start playing. Because to be fair, like there's some levity in my character.
Right.
But start playing. But stay loose, loose. Spontaneous, throwing suggestions out. I've never thrown so many suggestions out. I've never had so many suggestions accepted.
Wow.
Because I would try them. And I think that and it was sort of like, yeah, I'm a performing artist. When you say action, if I'm not stuck in my prep, all of that play, they didn't give me a spot at theater school because I could show what a diligent actor.
Mm-hmm.
Ultimately, they gave me, because in that audition for that theater school on that day, they saw something come to life.
Mm-hmm.
And they go, because ultimately it's about the performer,
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where I think, whether it be an audition or whether it be on set, I think we have to remember that we are, we're live performers. That's what we do. And that audition is a live moment with that casting director. And so we've got to kind of embrace that stuff and remember that we're live performers. And I do think, like I was saying about Chris Pine, the guy would come up with stuff, little gestures, moves, just easy physicality, looks, thought,
Mm-hmm.
stuff was happening because, he's in a good position and he's feeling confident about his career. He's got all that. He's just started a production company with the director.
Yeah. He's got wiggle room. Yeah.
Yeah, he's got wiggle room. He can dare to be bad,
Yeah.
But that was my thing, is like, I'm so afraid of being bad that I can't be good.
Okay. Yeah.
I'm so afraid of being bad that I'm not really being magical.
Right.
And what is that sparkle dust that makes performances timeless?
Mm-hmm.
How do you get that? And I'm not saying this is the only way, but it certainly started to make me go, when it's time to shoot, or when it's time to audition and press that record button, you gotta be, here we go. Something's gotta happen.
Mm-hmm.
And so, and I think, and then I think that also lends itself to more of you coming out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Because it's not some idea of the character that you're trying to present. Now it's you performing.
Yeah. Yeah. Inside the given
given it,
circumstances and what have you.
Inside the given circumstances and everything. But now we really get to see something that's uniquely you. Just inextricably you and nobody else. And that's really what casting wants. They don't want to see what you think they're looking for. They want to see what you bring, because then they can make a choice. But if everybody's sort of somewhere in some, it's like, you see it with young actors who kind of all want to somehow emulate De Niro and Pacino. And you kind of, I learned doing a method course with this amazing old guy, Jack Waltzer. It sort of dawned on me of like, why those guys became so defined in what they did. And it was their training was so heavily leaned into play your objective let the obstacle hit you. And when the obstacle hits you, behavior is born.
Wow.
Because all you're doing is playing your goddamn objective. You're playing your objective. You're going after. So we did this exercise in Jack Waltzer's class where we'd have to stack a house of cards. And he'd be like, you got 30 seconds, and he'd give you a reason. Like, you'd have to give it, you'd talk with him about finding a reason that you could kind of connect into that really mattered to you. And then somebody would come in the door, and it would be something like they need to borrow your car because they have to get out to the airport because their parent, who was about to go on a holiday, just had a heart attack at the airport, and they have to get out there and see them because apparently it's like find something that works for them. And what I started to realize that what was going on, and when it worked best, was that person coming in the door says, I need your car keys. I gotta, best friends, brothers even, whatever. I need your car keys. I gotta go out and get mom. And the person building the six is like, do not talk to me right now. I need to get this done because, and the highest of highest stakes, both. And as soon as those two things start to interact, holy shit, you start to watch people's behavior, because the behavior is born about trying to overcome an obstacle. And so when you see De Niro and Pacino's, they just became so, what I understood is they play their objectives so hard, they let the obstacle hit them and impact them so much that so much of them comes out. And so their performances become so stamped with their mark that we remember it for all time, because it's so human, it's so iconic, but it's also so them.
Their reactions are so them. Yeah.
Are so them. And so the idea of anybody else trying to do a bit of De Niro or a bit of Pacino is ridiculous, because that's sort of the great tragedy. You'll see people you love, but you will never do it the same as them, but you will do it uniquely like you.
Yeah.
And it's trying to find that,
So that's quite incredible, right? Like, after all of these years, to seemingly, from what I'm hearing you talk about, is you're really, really now finding your groove and your belief in what your instincts, right? Like, because that's the thing that we're ultimately all chasing, right? Is to believe our own instincts as a professional performer, like you say, and have them work, right? Like inside that. So when you're reading that script and you're there and at that giant table read or in the room with the powers to be, that your instincts are why you've got the job, not how you're playing the written, but how you're playing the unwritten, and knowing your genetic legacy, like we were talking about before. And I mean, as most actors, I imagine, coming up and still to this day, you're looking for those little nuggets that permeate. And what you said before about chasing your objective so fiercely and with such intent that when the obstacle hits you, acting, being, reacting, and all of that, I've never heard anyone put it like that before. And to be honest with you, I've always struggled with understanding how to play my objective or how to do it. And that actually shines a real light of clarity on it for me. So I love that. That's brilliant.
Yeah. I mean, and it's a hard thing. Like, it's a lot easier to say than do. And I'll be the first to admit to that. And I think I've got I look forward to a part where, the stakes, the stakes are, but I mean, no, I can think about even in my character in this, and it's actually, it will be, I will try to write that on, unfortunately we're not given hard copies of scripts, so I can't write it on the script, but I'll try to pin it on my wall as a reminder that no matter what it is to keep trying to play that and start at the beginning, and also just that thing of like, I think it's also because I grew up in film. Both my parents were filmmakers in Canada.
Wow.
And so I've always been overly possibly aware of the whole thing. And I PA'd and third AD'd for a little while as a young man, just so I could be on some of the sets of my dad to see him. And
I used to live in Canada, actually, by the way.
oh yeah?
Yeah, I lived for a year out in Banff in a little small town called Strathmore outside of Calgary, working in the oil patch. And
Oh, wicked.
yeah, it was wild. Yeah, back in the day. You're
That's
from Montreal,
intense.
right?
Yeah, originally.
Yeah. It's a great. I love Canada. It's a great place. So I'll just throw that in there.
Yeah. Yeah, no, so I think in a way, like, I was always aware of all the work that everybody else was doing on set, and so in a way it was kind of hard. And also just generally, I was not somebody that was good at claiming his space, and I saw lots of examples of other actors who claimed their space on sets or on stage or in general by like trying to consume up everybody else's space.
Right.
Like I've got to be loud, and you can tell they're just working out nerves. They're just they're actually terrified.
Yes.
But they've turned it into some kind of machismo behavior, or they turned it into like super, I'm just crazy, man, and you never know what I'm going to do, and I'm just going like, I'm loose, I'm wild, I'm unpredictable, and you're just like.
You're very predictable, actually.
You're actually very predictable and very leaky. You're very leaky. Like, take care of your own shit. But so I think there's a balance. It's a beast of a medium on which to be a performing artist. Because as I tell young actors, like I consider film acting a bit like. Having to perform for the scope of a sniper rifle, in the sense that you've got this like, from your perspective as an actor, there you are, and there, like in a show like this, there's minimum 500 crew members on set. It's epic. There's 45 45-foot techno jibs. There's set dressing for as far as the eye can see, tons of extras. And some massive sweeping shot and two cameras turning, cutting, and sweeping. And there's a massive lead in until the camera eventually sort of settles on you. And it's like, and then go. And like, go. And I think I was so conscious of like, that caused me to hold my breath. Metaphorically, literally, probably a little bit, and so how do you just buzz out and I think it's helped to be getting, of course, it's helped that I've gotten a series regular role, not a series lead, a series regular role. It helps that everybody on this is more or less a known name, all very talented, and that there's a sense of we're all beginning and creating something together, and it's for all of us.
There's a unity there. Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there's a real ensemble, and so the circumstances are definitely
favorable.
And I'm one of the oldest. That helps as well.
Yeah, you do naturally assume a hierarchical sort of placement when you're the oldest in the crew. Like. On a very, of course, this is a funny thing that I thought to myself before doing this. You and I spoke, and I talked about the kind of standard guest that I have on here is that this podcast is, hosted by someone who is the person who they're talking to. There's a bit of a disparity between our experience levels, but I can only try and draw some kind of, without sounding like a total prick, similarities in that when I used to do student films, because I didn't come to acting till I was 32, 33. So the only place I could find confidence in an area I was terrified. I mean, auditioning for my first student film, I was fucking losing my mind in the car out the front. You know what I mean? It's a fucking student film. But where I found confidence was in what you just said, was that I was going to be the oldest on set. And I wasn't just naturally I wasn't going to be intimidated by a bunch of 18-year-olds. And so you grab it wherever the fuck you can. Yeah.
Totally. Absolutely. And I think the way you think about art, and the way you think about what you do and performance, I think that's, you're either switched on and you're either interested in it, you're either a listener and you either believe that you always got something to learn, and you either are somebody that is not not so insecure that they push, I got this, I know this, I know, so I've always been curious. I want to find my confidence and find my ease, but I don't ever want to pretend I know, and would love to keep learning. And I'm so aware of all the things I'd like to be able to do better as an actor, and like to try more, and and all of that. And I don't think that's changed. I'll never forget working with an actor named Bruce. What's his name, man? He played JFK in a series, or I think he played JFK in a very famous film. He might have been nominated, but he's in lots of films he was the main general in Spectral.
Okay. Yeah. I can't place his face, but I'm trying to think of JFK.
Yeah. No, but it wasn't that JFK. It was a different, or was it? No, it wasn't. It wasn't JFK. I think it was another film. He got huge. He's in everything. He's in Meryl Streep movies. He's a guy. He's a Canadian actor who shows up in absolutely everything. I mean, like his thing. And I remember being on set with him in Spectral, and some of those guys came from theater. A lot of them very, very good actors. But I just remember, and it was Spectral. It wasn't like hugely challenging script, but at some point he was asking me, we were talking about stuff, and we were all sort of giving opinions on the stuff, and I started to express some ideas about it. And eventually he just sort of took to my way of thinking about a scene. And so he started to sort of be like, so what do you think about this scene? Even if I'm like, I was just like a stand around guy.
Right.
But what do you think about the scene? And what do you think of the character? And we got into it. And I think you kind of realize that, like, again, it's always that we have stronger ideas than we think we do. We know more than we do.
I think you hit the nail on the head. You hit the absolute nail on the head. I'm sorry, I don't mean to cut you off, but it is something that every now and then when it happens, it gives me a lot of confidence when I go, oh shit, I actually do know what the fuck I'm talking about, and maybe I do have something to say, and I won't be so nervous next time. And I have actually been, in terms of photography, I mean, I remember, standing in front of 15 people to direct an editorial, and I'd been in it 15 years, and I'm a bit nervous or whatever. And then someone comes to me and says, well, what do you think about what this? And I'm like, okay, so what's happening here is we're going to do this. I'm like, oh shit, I actually, they're nice little moments. You should grab hold of them because they'll serve you well if you can without, and there's no arrogance in that. You need it.
Yeah. You need, and in fact, that's the thing that allows you to kind of, I think, keep learning in a healthy way, rather than like I'm shit. I don't.
No, that's just so destructive. It's bullshit. When people say, "Oh, I don't like what I did. I hate my work." I'm like, well, why the fuck are you doing it? Like, love what you do. Do the film, write the thing that you want to watch, shoot the thing that you want to watch, act in the thing that you would watch, and then you will always be a healthy actor, and you'll have this pure body of work. I that's how I think about it anyways.
Yeah, no, totally.
I think you've got we're rounding down to time for you, I think. And
do you have any last questions?
Man, I mean, I got a million questions. But I hope that we will have a part 2. But I know that it's you're in New Zealand and time's ticking on, so you've been more than gracious and humble with your time.
Yeah, let's do a part two in maybe in a week or so, a couple of
Oh,
weeks or
I
something.
would.
I'd love to do part two. I love talking about this stuff.
Yeah, I could. Till I'm blue in the
Yeah.
face, man. I fucking love it so much. I will say this in closing. There was this. It has served me really, really well, and I heard it again in a podcast today. And I hold on to it quite strongly because even this podcast, I hate to break it to you, it doesn't have a huge audience. Hopefully, I hope that it does one day soon. And just like acting, you go through a cycle of doubt and confidence and what have you. And why am I doing this? And would anyone listen? And blah blah blah. Because this as I said to you before, you are a unique guest in terms of my standard guest. But I was listening to Dax Shepard. I don't know if you ever.
Oh, I love him.
Right?
Love
Incredible.
him. Best.
Incredible.
Best,
And
yeah.
just and not to sound like that sort of big, idolizing fan, but I do find a lot of similarities in the way that he perceives life. There's only a couple of years between us, maybe 4 years between us or something like that, and obviously our experiences are different. But he said, when he first started the podcasting, and I heard him say this around the time that I was about maybe 10 episodes in, and decided I wasn't going to do any prep for podcasts. And then I heard him say that Chris Hardwick, I think, had said to him, don't do any prep, just fucking roll with it and mold with it. And it will teach you how to listen better and how to respond better and stay engaged better. And I heard him again say that today in a podcast. And I don't even know why I started this tangent. I've got so connected to what I was saying. I lost where we started with this. But
it ties in. It ties into exactly what we were saying in terms of you're trusting yourself more and more to run with whatever's thrown at you, and that you can keep it going. You can keep the ball in the air, and you can keep it entertaining, and that you will come back with a question. You're proving to yourself that if you don't prep, you still are. You're probably more so going to come up with a question that actually inspires your guest.
Well, there's necessity there, right? And you're not surprised by any of the answers because you don't. You are surprised by all the answers because you don't know them already. I love that because I have a terrible attention span, and it's not because I'm not interested. There are a couple of things that I can stay connected to for as long as they run, and it doesn't matter how long they run for. And then the rest, I'm fucking gone. So like, and it's to my wife's great frustration. But that's why you said that's how I connect, because we were talking about this till we're blue in the face. I really, really can. Anyways, yes, I really appreciate you taking the time to do this, man.
It's my pleasure, man. It's good that you're doing it.
It's
really nice. It's a really nice podcast. It's very nice to talk about it, and it's and they're really good questions, and it's fun. It's fun to reflect on a career. I've had a couple of incidents recently where I've been able to kind of reflect back on it, and it's as I was saying to you in the earlier phone call, it's kind of I think it's so cool to realize that you've just kept learning, and that you're still, somebody's asking you about stuff, and you're just at a new chapter, and ever writing itself novel. The novel is just still being written, and so it's very cool. Yeah, it's very cool to speak with you about it.
Thank you, man. I appreciate your kind words and your time, and this has been a real treat.
Yeah, cool.
Thanks, brother.
Lovely. Yeah. Okay. We'll talk soon.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Take care.
Okay.
Bye.